Hello, Jakarta and the world. I'm Doug Johnson, and this is White Trash Talking. Okay, today I want to make it a little bit more personal. I want to talk about a personal dental horror story. It's a series of stories. It's my whole life, basically. I believe that I represent the plight of a lot of people around the world who have been mistreated and abused by dentists. A lot of people are not even aware that they've been the victim of dentist abuse. Yeah, so what I want to talk about is that dentists perform treatments that are unnecessary. This has happened to me. It's still happening to this day. And they're doing it just for money, not because a patient needs it. In fact, the patient does not need it. Okay, and also that the dentists are doing work that's harmful to our health. And I'm talking about mercury amalgam fillings and root canals, which I will get into the science of a little bit. So here's a photo of my mouth. This was taken about 4 years ago, and you see the big screws in the mouth. These are dental implants. Well, they have replaced teeth that broke apart and had to be removed. They were previously root canals, and before they were root canals, they were teeth that were filled with amalgam fillings. And that is a progression. Amalgam fillings that break apart the tooth because amalgam expands and breaks apart the tooth. And at the middle point of your life, you're going to have to get them crowned or do a root canal, and that'll be explained. And then that will fail, which in my case did, and they're removed, and then they put in these implants. The whole process is extremely expensive to go through all of that. Okay, so my story starts when I'm a little kid, and my grandfather was a dentist, and my mother, as a little girl, worked in his office and helped him out and knew a little bit about that line of work. And my mother was also very diligent about taking us to the dentist twice a year because she felt it was important, and I agree with her. And but unfortunately, it didn't work out in our case. So she took us, and every time the dentist found cavities, even though we brushed our teeth, our mother made us brush our teeth, we had cavities every time. I have 3 brothers, and we would go in, and it was typical visit was we'd sit in a row of chairs, one of us would go in, we would hear screaming in the office. When the drill started, it was a zzz, and you go, oh no, and you'd get really scared sitting out there in the lobby. And then it was your turn, and you had to go in, and you're shaking and terrified, and you get this really painful shot, because back then they didn't have the topical pain relief. Now they give you 2 shots, and so the big shot doesn't hurt as much. But no, back then it was extremely painful, and they would drill into the teeth, and it was horrifying. And you would feel your tooth breaking apart, and it's terrible. And every time I had 2 or 3 cavities every time, always in the molars, and that went on for about 4 years. So 2 times a year, 2 to 3 cavities each time, 4 years. Do the math, okay? Then my mother, she took us for a visit, and she got talking to the dentist, to the receptionist. They needed someone to work for them. My mother was qualified, and so they hired her. And on that visit and subsequent visits, no cavities with me or my brothers. No cavities after that point. Well, I never really thought too much about it, except I thought, well, that's great. I haven't had a cavity since. I haven't had decay in my tooth that required a filling since I was about 10 years old, 11 maybe. And the only logical explanation is that now that she was working for him, dental visits for the children were free. He had no incentive to do any work because he wasn't going to make any money from us. All right? And it turns out, my mom worked for him for, I don't know, for 4 years or so. And he was an alcoholic. He would work on patients drunk, and he would sometimes make mistakes, which my mother came home and told us about. I won't say the dentist's name, but he's since died. He had his own personal airplane, and he crashed it. And I'm not surprised that he crashed it. He's a raging alcoholic. Okay, so for many years I thought this is just my story, and then I thought about it more and more. I thought, no, I lived in a small Midwestern town. This is just one dentist in the whole United States. He's the only one doing this? No way. So I recently Googled testimonials about this sort of thing, and I came across this site, the drill and fill abuse of the 1970s. And that's the term for it, drill and fill. This is before the era of root canals, so this is their bread and butter. And these are some of the testimonials in this. Phil Webbs says that the drill and fill abuse of the 70s meant that dentists got paid for treatments more so than looking after people's teeth. Treatments meant money, and dentists got rich. At the time, I trusted the medical profession and my dentist. I was puzzled as to why most times I visited a dentist, I needed a filling. All of my molars, including my first set, were filled multiple times, a lucrative business for the dentists of that era. Now my teeth are in a shocking state. The consequence of having all of your molars filled a couple of times is that eventually the teeth break, need repair, and eventually they are extracted as they are not salvageable. Infection inevitably sets in. I have not had a genuine filling for some 20 years, and he speculates that there is no more space for fillings. Okay. Mannix Man 27 says, I had loads of fillings in the first few years of high school. I find it strange that I needed fillings after having the teeth for only a few years, while some of my teeth are fine nearly 30 years later. Okay, that's a good question. Okay, and Jones says, my mom was a dental nurse. This is my story. So I had every possible preventative treatment available in the 70s, plus checkups more regularly than the average person. Despite this, I have a mouthful of fillings fitted in the 70s, which now I'm in my 50s are starting to fall out at an alarming rate. It was definitely a money-making racket. So that's the drill and fill era, thanks to the fillings. So that practice is still going on. This is, I'm not going to show it, but it's about a 17-minute expose recently aired on mainstream television in the U.S. called Open Wide. And dental offices are being bought up. They're becoming parts of conglomerates, and their focus is on making money. So they're pressuring dentists to do treatments that are unnecessary. And if you watch this, you'll see the testimonials there. Horrible stuff. It's still going on. Not so much amalgam, but all kinds of other stuff. Okay, so I want to look at the science of mercury amalgam because it's still being practiced in the United States. It's recommended not to be used for pregnant women, very young children, say under the 6 years old, and people who have kidney problems and liver problems and very sick people. But otherwise, they say, yeah, you can use mercury. And in 2025, as of January 1st, it's completely banned in the EU. No mercury amalgam is used in Europe at all from now on. So let's look at some of the research done on mercury. It's very interesting.
What you're seeing is mercury vapor coming off a 25-year-old silver amalgam filling in an extracted tooth. The background is a phosphorescent screen. The mercury vapor absorbs the fluorescent light, and you can see it as a shadow on the screen. This is mercury coming off a filling that was dipped in water that's the same temperature as the human body. This is a filling that was rubbed with a pencil eraser for just a few seconds. Like going to the hygienist and having her clean your teeth. These are not small amounts of mercury. If you can see it, it's more than 1,000 times higher than the Environmental Protection Agency will allow for the air that we breathe. What about the last time you went to the dentist and they drilled on your tooth Here is the mercury vapor every time you raise the temperature to 110 degrees with hot coffee or warm water back in 1985.
Okay, so there's no dispute now that a tooth filled with amalgam emits gas throughout the day. The science is clear. The toxicity is clear. But let's listen further.
The International Academy of Oral Medicine Toxicology set out to determine the amount of mercury that was coming off fillings. And here's the graph, showing substantial quantities of mercury were measured coming off fillings. And then we estimated the total dose. And then we began animal experiments and put radioactive fillings in sheep. Mercury accumulated in the jaw, stomach, liver, and kidney of the sheep in just 30 days. Substantial quantities of mercury spread from the fillings to every organ in that sheep's body. Then we measured that the sheep's kidneys dropped in their ability by 60% to clear inulin, an indication of kidney malfunction. Whole body imaging of monkeys found exactly the same thing. They had mercury in their jaw, kidneys, liver, intestine, and heart.
Yeah, so it's clear that what transpires in the mouth becomes systemic. That if you have mercury in the mouth, it's leached into the body, throughout the major organs, into the gut. This is what happened to me. It's what happens every time. Okay, so I want to look at a 60 Minutes episode. This is going back to the early 1990s. This is how long they've known. And it's still allowed in the U.S. Let's have a listen.
Scientists, doctors, and dentists are saying silver amalgams should be banned.
Open wide.
Last summer, the EPA banned mercury from indoor latex paint because of mercury vapor. The vapor level in this patient's mouth after chewing for 10 minutes is 92 times higher than the mercury vapor level in a newly painted room, 3 times higher than the U.S. government allows in the workplace. Now, a number of medical schools are looking at the relationship between mercury vapor in the mouth and a whole variety of diseases. Alzheimer's, arthritis, and colitis have all been linked to mercury poisoning.
It's been linked to mercury poisoning. Alzheimer's, neurological diseases are linked. And yet they act like we don't know where this comes from. We don't know what caused this. It just happened. No, they know. They're suppressing the science. This is what's happening. Okay, let's continue.
Mercury in the workplace has produced kidney damage, brain damage, birth defects, and symptoms of multiple sclerosis.
You will get some mercury vapor. There's no doubt about that.
Dr. Heber Simmons speaks for the American Dental Association. Even though more and more American dentists have serious doubts about amalgam, the ADA, which sets standards and approves products, says it is perfectly safe. Up until 7 years ago, the ADA said no vapor at all was released from fillings.
But the amounts that we're seeing are far below any level that could cause a problem. And the levels that we're seeing are simply not clinically significant.
So this is outrageous. I mean, you just saw the evidence yourself. It's irrefutable. All you have to do is open your eyes. There it is. And why would the ADA take this route? Why would they want to continue using dental amalgam? Well, my theory is that it's easier for the dentists who only know this kind of practice to continue. There's so many manufacturers and so on who have an investment in the continuation of dental amalgam, who don't want to lose their money. So many dentists would have to be retrained, and they don't want to open themselves up to lawsuits, because if it ever comes out that people are getting Alzheimer's from this or other neurological diseases such as MS and all kinds of diseases, they would be open for lawsuits. So they continue to perpetuate the problem. All right, let's finish up.
So you can see that there is a constant release of mercury vapor.
We don't dispute that at all. But the amount that is being released when you chew is such of a small amount and a minuscule amount that it is not going to cause a problem.
The guy's a liar. Plain and simple. He knows. All right, here's some health conditions that are caused by mercury. This is from the IAOMT website. These dentists are biological dentists. They're the best in the world. If you ever need dental treatment, consult with them. So Alzheimer's, autism, these are some of the big ones. Depression. How many people go to a psychiatrist for depression? They don't know the cause of it is mercury amalgam in their mouth. Many times it is. I'm not saying always, but why not consider that? At least consider it. Notice the ones in bold. These are the symptoms that I had, the problems. Thyroiditis, I had hyperthyroidism. I still suffer from that. I'll talk about that in more detail. Okay, so now I want to look at the next aspect, which is root canals. This is the new bread and butter for the dentist, and the same pattern is unfolding in terms of denial of its toxicity for the same reasons. All right, so what I'm going to show you is from a program that aired on Netflix in 2019. I watched it with my wife. It's called The Root Cause. It was on for about a month, and then they pulled it. There was so much uproar about this. People were watching it and getting freaked out. Well, they were being educated. They began talking to their dentist and saying, hey, what are you doing? And the dentist complained, the ADA complained, so they pulled it. It's too bad that they pulled it. But so these doctors appeared on that episode. And if you can ever get hold of The Root Cause, you must watch it. All right, so let's listen.
What if I could tell you that 98% of women that have breast cancer have a root canal tooth on the same side as their offending breast cancer?
What if I told you that the biggest toxic influence in the body in a chronically ill person is a root canal tooth?
What if I could tell you that the leading authority in cardiovascular prevention, which is Bale and Doneen, does not condone root canals in your mouth because of the bacteria?
Of the people that come to see me with chronic illness, the question is how many of them have a dental etiology to the cause of their illness? I would say almost all of them.
The vast majority of chronic degenerative diseases begin with problems in the mouth, infections and toxins, and it's only until those are addressed that you're going to get any clear positive response with your disease.
So the same principles that work here as it was with amalgam, it becomes systemic. Things enter your body through the mouth. That it is the source of much of your illness, of toxicity. And it's the case with mercury. It goes into the mouth and then it's spread throughout the whole body. The same with the bacteria in root canals. It's harbored in the mouth and it spreads through the body. Let's continue listening.
People are beginning to realize, even from the current day modern and very traditional literature, that it's impossible to sterilize a root canal system.
Most conventional dentists believe there's no problem with them, but I personally couldn't disagree more. I think that they're a hidden source of toxicity for almost anyone.
The reason that root canals have an inherent problem is that because we know that nowhere else in the body can we leave dead tissue. Anywhere else in the body, your appendix dies, you have dead tissue that doesn't heal in any other area of the body, we know we have to remove that because it's a haven for bacteria and it's not compatible with health. And the same is true in a tooth. A tooth is a living structure, has a blood supply, has a nerve supply. And so when a tooth dies or becomes infected and we decide to go in and do a root canal, even the best endodontist or root canal specialist can do a great job at cleaning out the main canal of any of the teeth. But what they can't get to are all of these thousands of tubules. You could see if you cut a tooth in half or under a microscope, you can see these thousands of tubules that run out in every different direction at all sorts of angles off from the main canal.
Those microtubules are big enough for a bacteria to fit in, but not much else. And the problem is if you've got 6 to 8 miles of microtubules in a single tooth, it's impossible. You can see why it's impossible to sterilize that tooth.
So, after the root canal has been performed, unfortunately, bacteria still reside within the tooth. And now you have this nice, warm, incubated tooth where the bacteria are able to flourish. And now there is no access from the patient's own immune system to the tooth because in the process of doing the root canal treatment, the blood supply and the nerve have been severed from that tooth. So now the body can't deliver its own immune defenses to help keep the infection in check.
This makes intuitive sense to me. The first time I watched it, I was so struck by this. Of course, you can't leave something dead in the body. You know, we know this intuitively. And dead things rot. And they're eaten by bacteria and so on. That's nature. And the tooth is not sealed. It leaches into your mouth, into your saliva, it gets into your blood, it's spread throughout your body, into your gut, and it makes you very sick. And these toxins, this bacteria is very, very toxic. All right, let's continue.
70 to 90% of all medical problems actually originate in the mouth. Conventional dentistry still has a focus on the mechanistic Newtonian mentality that the teeth are not connected to the rest of the body. I mean, embryologically, the teeth develop from the same tissues that gives rise to your sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. The blood supply and the mouth literally will take any toxins via the lymphatic system and take it down to the thyroid, the thymus, the heart, and the rest of the body. So there is a direct connection.
The teeth is not just like a stone in the mouth. It is extremely densely connected. The pulp is extremely densely connected to the lymph system, to the autonomic nerve system. More than any other organs, it's connected to the afferences, the sensitive nerves to the brain directly, and to all meridian systems.
Every tooth connects up energetically through the meridian system to certain organs and glands. So for example, on the upper side of the jaw, the last 2 molars and this bicuspid actually connect up energetically to the left breast, and on this side it's to the right breast. And 95% of the time, women who have breast cancer who undergo a thermographic study will be found to have hot spots in the jaw on the same side as that malignant breast.
Look, you don't have to believe this right away. Just make yourself aware of it. And if you know someone who's sick, they have a neurological problem, or they develop cancer, ask them about their teeth. Ask them if they have silver fillings. That doesn't hurt. And a lot of people don't want to talk about it, but this is, I think this is the future if the medical profession will just not ignore the science. Medical and dental industry should be working together for sure. Okay, let's listen to the last segment of this.
Probably the earliest research on root canal treated teeth that clearly demonstrated how toxic they were all of the time was the work of Dr. Weston Price.
Dr. Weston Price, who did 25 years of research on root canals, found that they could cause almost anything, from mental disease to heart disease to arthritis.
So when Weston Price started doing root canals on his patients, he found that a lot of them were getting sick. And so he started doing some research. He'd take out the tooth, he would sterilize the tooth on the outside, making sure that there was nothing as far as bacteria, slip it under the skin of a rabbit, and found out that the rabbit had whatever disease the patient had.
Who, let's say, had heart disease, kidney disease, arthritis, neurologic disease, you name it. And even more amazingly is it would take that same tooth and successively put it underneath the skin of 20, 30, 50 consecutive rabbits, and they all developed the same medical syndrome as the original person who supplied that tooth.
Okay, if they dispute that research, try it again, replicate it. I mean, this needs to be looked at for sure by those who deny it, because there's too much at stake. So what happened in my case was that about 8 years ago, I went to a dentist to have yet another root canal. This would be my 5th or 6th one. And while preparing the tooth for the crown, the dentist drilled into the mercury amalgam that I still had in my mouth from my childhood. Less than 48 hours later, I woke up in the middle of the night with severe, life-threatening heart palpitations, arrhythmia. And at the hospital, it was discovered that my thyroid was damaged from the huge discharge of mercury into my mouth. And this comes after many years of having mercury leached into my mouth. And so my load of mercury is already very high. So this just tipped the scale. I was referred by a physician to an oral surgeon who safely removed my amalgam, and he used IAOMT protocols, which is the only way to do it. You have to remove amalgam safely so that it doesn't endanger your life or the dentist's life, okay? And while the dentist was removing the amalgam, he discovered that my root canals had leached toxic bacteria into my jawbone, which was now severely infected. So he removed the infection as well. I was suffering from both of these phenomena at the same time. I remained very sick for a couple of years, and to this day I require a special diet, and I have an autoimmune disorder that makes me violently susceptible to little things, insect bites, especially mosquito bites. That's one thing. Otherwise, I'm managing to survive. That's my story, and that's the story of many others as well. Okay, that's all I have. Please click like and subscribe. Send me a message if you have a question about anything I said here, let me know. And I will see you next time, next week. Bye.